Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Soldiers To Sidelines, Coaching Legends and American Heroes. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Harrison Bernstein, founder and executive director of Soldiers To Sidelines. And I'm just so excited that everyone's here tonight to engage in this awesome discussion about leadership, military service, and sports. And tonight's sport is really, we have a legend in football. And our two guests tonight are Bryce McDonald and Coach Dick Vermeil. Bryce McDonald is our American hero. Coach McDonald played fullback for the U.S. Naval Academy football team. He graduated in 2003 and was then commissioned into the United States Marine Corps as an infantry officer and served until 2012. In 2006, while stationed in Iraq, an executive officer of 2-4, he was injured and was awarded a Purple Heart. In 2021, just last year, ESPN College Game Day aired a special feature story on Bryce's heroic story leading into the Army-Navy football game. I encourage everyone to check that out. You can Google it on YouTube, and it's like 6 minutes of sheer inspiration. McDonald served as the director of football operations for the Naval Academy for 5 seasons, and he spent 3 years as the executive administrator and military liaison officer for the football team. McDonald also assisted Coach Niumatalolo and the military officer representatives with professional development and molding Navy football players to assume future positions of leadership within the Navy and Marine Corps. His success developing leaders helped land him a coaching position for the midshipmen as offensive tackles coach. And then in 2018, Coach McDonald was hired by Chip Kelly to join UCLA as chief of staff. In 3 years, he has made tremendous impact and has provided pathways for Soldiers To Sideline soldier coaches to break into college football coaching. We are grateful for Bryce McDonald, who recently helped soldier coach and U.S. Marine Anthony Golliver earn a J position with the Bruins. So thank you so much, Coach McDonald. Thank you for being here. I love it.
Yeah, I can tell
Harrison,
that.
appreciate you, man. In this room, no hero, brother. Just happy to be here. A dude that raised his hand for a couple of years.
Awesome. Yeah. And, I second that in a sense that, you're a hero, not just for your service then, but for your service now. And everybody here who is serving either in the military or as a coach, it is heroic to just give yourself for somebody else, man. So it's so great for all of us to be on this call tonight. And our next guest is Coach Dick Vermeil. Coach Vermeil needs no introduction. As we all know, many of the outstanding achievements as an NFL Hall of Fame coach. However, we're going to talk about it anyway, in case you are the first person ever to watch football. Many of these achievements and stories made their way into Hollywood with such movies as Invincible and American Underdog. Coach grew up playing quarterback in Napa Valley, California, and eventually became the starting quarterback at San Jose State, which might be a dream job for me, is to coach football in Napa Valley for all the other extracurricular reasons that the land produces. Coach served as head coach in the NFL for 15 seasons. He was the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles for 7 seasons, the St. Louis Rams for 3, and the Kansas City Chiefs for 5. Prior to the NFL, he was the head football coach at Hillsdale High School from 1960 to 1962, Napa Junior College in 1964, my dream job, and UCLA from 1974 to 1975. So it's really cool to have 2 UCLA historical coaches on the call tonight. Vermeil led the UCLA team to victory in the 1976 Rose Bowl. So Vermeil's NFL tenure would see him improve the fortunes of those teams that had losing records before his arrival. And he had led these teams to playoffs, division titles, and then a Super Bowl title with the Rams. So becoming Philadelphia's head coach in 1976, Vermeil took over for a team that had not qualified for the postseason, won a football game, or clinched the division since 1960. So he ended these droughts between 1978 and 1980 en route to the Eagles' first Super Bowl appearance in Super Bowl 15. So after retiring following the 82 season, Vermeil spent 15 years away from the NFL and then returned in 1997 with the Rams. And as we all know, he led the greatest show on turf and then won Super Bowl 34. During the 2003 season, when he was coaching for the Chiefs, he led them to their first division title and postseason berth since 1997. And if I'm not mistaken, Coach, you can corroborate this, but Coach Al Saunders told me once that in that season, y'all went 4 games straight without punting. Is that correct?
It might be an exaggeration, but it's close. Okay, I never contradict Al. You know, I know we were 9-0 when we finally got beat that year.
Yeah, that team was awesome. So it was super believable, and I do believe him. So I know he went through it. It was like some insane number of consecutive series without punting. So Coach Vermeil,
Stretch things a little bit.
well, that with Priest and those guys and Larry Johnson picking, I mean, that was just unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, what's really exciting too, and we were talking about this before, you know, Coach Vermeil founded Vermeil Wines when he partnered with winemaker Paul Smith in 1999. So his first signature bottling was the Jean-Louis Cabernet Sauvignon in dedication to his paternal great-grandfather. So today, Vermeil Wines makes 11 different wines, one of which is called 34 after the Super Bowl victory with the Rams. And I can tell you, I personally love that wine, and I really encourage anybody to go out, buy a bottle of that if you can find it, because it's outstanding. So thanks so much for being here, Coach.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Well, to kick things off, this conversation is going to be centered around a couple things that both Coach McDonald and Coach Vermeil are known for. One is authenticity and how that resulted in both your successes. And then you both have this uncanny ability to see the deeper, better side of people, right? The movie Invincible is about that with Vince Papale, right? The American Underdog is about Kurt Warner, and Bryce McDonald has led these leadership programs within the Naval Academy, developing leaders, and has looked into the soul of one of our own very own soldier coaches and earned him his first GA position with the UCLA Bruins football team. So, I wonder, Bryce, I'm just going to turn it over for you first. What about your military experience really shaped the way that you look at leaders and develop them to this day?
Great question, Harrison. First and foremost, when you think about organizational management and leading, you need to turn it around real quick. If you're head of an organization, how can I best serve this organization to make it successful? And if your mind picture is an organization, a picture of a building, it's really not. The soul of that building or the soul of that facility or the soul of that battalion is the people. So first and foremost is, as a leader, how may I best serve the people? Often talking to recruits, you always ask the initial questions, what are you looking for in a college? What are you looking for down the road? What do you want to study? What do you want football to bring you? And you can always see the clear eyes of the parents and the clear eyes of the players that resonate with good men in your building, and how that translates to taking chances. Had a DOD 15 deployment guy getting some traumatic brain injury work on. He's still working, deploying, but that was my number one question. What's your number one quality when you look for people to go out and gain assets and collect intel? Calculated risk. So taking chance on a guy like Anthony Golliver, who's still in the Marine Corps, doing his bridge program, DoD bridge program with UCLA football. It's a calculated risk. First off, he's a Naval Academy grad. He's a United States Marine. He had been coaching and he had gone through your program, and you're also jumping on a table for him. But taking risk on servicemen is a calculated risk, just because you know the soul of the people you're getting. I wouldn't be sitting at this desk if Chip Kelly didn't take a risk on me. He's a huge advocate of the military. Today, we had 3 Marines under this roof working for the football team. So whenever you take a chance on a member from the military, you're going to get a couple things. You're going to work your ass off. You're going to have passion for what you do. And they know that being a leader is really serving. It's that simple.
Man, great answer. And Coach Vermeil, when you hear that story, I think of, those movies that have been made about you taking risks on people. And you hear Coach McDonald talk about seeing like the soul of a person and realizing what their potential is. How have you done that? And how did you know to take chances on two guys in particular that those movies were made out of were old? Like Vince Papale was older for a football player at the time, and so was Kurt Warner. So how did you see into this, and how do you approach that aspect of recruiting?
Well, first, I always told my staff, I'm going on what I see, not so much opinions and advice. And I'm going on the examples I see within an individual. And when you see certain things as a coach that tell you there's something really deep inside this guy that's helping him be what he is, and he might even know what he is, and you might think, like I said to Kurt, I can't wait to find out what it is, and it's a feel. I think coaching high school football helped me. I think that I think being around John Wooden helped me. I can remember complaining to John Wooden one day about losing some good recruits. But you would appreciate this, to USC, and after signing day. And Bryce, he said to me, Coach, he said, don't worry about the guys that you lose to USC. He says, they're always going to have better players than you. Just make sure you make everybody in your team the best that he could possibly be. Everything will take care of itself. The second year we beat him to go to the Rose Bowl. Okay. And, I always look into a kid's willingness to make a true commitment, a true effort to be something, and without coaches pushing him, but just that innate drive. And when you collect a bunch of people that have that innate drive, it's a hell of a lot easier to synchronize their thinking. There's a term used all the time in the NFL now. I read it every day in the Inquirer. For building a culture. Well, what you're really doing is synchronizing the thinking of the people in the building. And being a head coach as a leader, I started with everybody in the building. From the minute you walked in, the person with the reception desk, I would talk about how I wanted her to represent me, the organization, and herself when she speaks to someone she's never met before. Well, all through the entire building, from the equipment guy to the team doctors. And because our number one product is our players. And, even today, there's NFL teams, they're thinking about winning and all their win-loss records, but what they got to think about is their product, their individual players. They're the cars at Ford Motor Company. They're the cars at Chevrolet. And these are what you're producing. And what you want to produce is the most synchronized group of individuals you could possibly produce. And not always based on the most talented group, but a collective talent put together, and you teach them to work. In our society today, more so today than ever before, I think there's a lot of people that think hard work is a form of punishment. It's not. It's a solution. It's a solution. And like the Navy SEALs, you do today what others don't. You do tomorrow what others can't. I added do yesterday what others forgot. Okay, you just keep. And when I have found out that when kids, players, coaches, people in buildings start to enjoy the benefit of their efforts become habitual. And they're in constant search for more of that great feeling of satisfaction of what they've done and what they're doing, regardless of how much it hurts and how much pain and these kind of things. They start to enjoy the sensation of performance. They see it themselves. And I've seen so many times, I didn't have to tell a kid he was getting better. He knew it. He could feel it. And when you start putting teams together, one of the things I'm most proud of is the first 2 years in 3 different football teams, my teams won 34% of the game. Okay. The third year, they won 74% of the games. All 3 teams, we're the only coaching staff that ever did this in the history of the league. All 3 teams that experience being the only undefeated team in football coming out of training camp.
Wow.
The Eagles were 6-0 in 81. The Rams were 6-0 in 99, and the Chiefs were 9-0 in 2003. So some of the things we're doing were right, you know, and it wasn't always based on getting better players. It was building better players from the inside out. From the inside out, you can add bulk and all that, but if you don't want them bad enough, the bulk doesn't help them. You know, you need the whole commitment. And the other thing is when you're lined up next to a guy that's making the same commitment you are, you start, I mean, you love the feeling. You love sitting next to him. You know, it's infectious. And that's why I always thought my third year, with the hardest part was to keep that third year infection and mutual respect that grows into love for each other, to keep it going after you enjoy success. And I think that's why sometimes teams have a hard time winning after the Super Bowl. You know, they get there and they think that's it, they've done it. And what got them there starts fading away a little bit. You know, and some say, well, the team gets older, oh, it's an injury factor. I really think more often than not, it's an emotional factor. You know, the thinking isn't as synchronized. Now they're thinking about other things. And now they still try to look the same, to do the same. Doesn't turn out the same. No, I just, you know, I've never, there's no way you can tell me that there's a correlation between working less and getting better. I know a lot of people trying it today. You know, a lot of people in the NFL saying, well, we're backing off the contact, we're backing off the OTAs, we're backing off the mini camps, we're backing off the training camps, we're backing off the double days. Let me tell you something. Like you said, you told people I coached here 7 years, okay? My left tackle, Stan Walters, played for me 7 years. My center, guard Morris, center, 7 years. My right tackle, Jerry Sizemore, 7 years. The three of them combined missed 3 games. The three of them combined missed 3 games. We practice differently. And you're not just hit to be hit and contact, but disciplined contact work. And as you know, Bryce said, it hones your instinct for contact. And you teach yourself how to protect yourself in violent contact. And, you know, I've always said, football is not a contact sport. It's a combat sport. Dancing is a contact sport. Sunday afternoon, that's offensive center lines up in that 340-pound nose guard. That's not a contact sport. It's combat. And the kids that are really trained the most intensely and refined the unique techniques, and they're instinctively now starting to apply them under pressure, you start looking pretty good.
So, Bryce, when you hear that, right? How is UCLA like incorporating these things in their journey? Because right now, as an outsider looking in, you see the upward trajectory and the momentum that UCLA football has been having. And we hear about extraordinary effort from Coach Vermeil. And we also hear about managing the emotion, right? It's an emotional game and we want to ride the wave when it's high, but how do we mitigate, and how are you and the UCLA staff mitigating like the down, right? So it's not so precipitous at the end where you can maintain high energy, high effort, high emotion, and get results.
First off, Harrison, when I hear that, I just wanted to keep going. So I'm going to be really short to pass it back over to the Rose Bowl winning, Super Bowl winning coach. First off, I just work here and I assist Coach Kelly's vision. So yes, we've gotten incrementally better every year. Our mission is in the people, is in the men. Make them go to class. We have standards for grades, 6 straight quarters of a 3.0 or higher at the #1 public institution in America. And the quality of football, quality of recruit is getting better. But we've also got a secret ingredient of one of the smartest minds in football who gives 2 craps about these human beings coming through this facility every day and taking care of them. Mindset is a huge deal for us. It's sewn in on the back of our jersey. HRTM, habits reflect the mission. We haven't won a Pac-12 championship yet. We haven't won the Rose Bowl yet, like Coach Vermeil. So how do you not be satisfied? We don't have to think about the letdown after the Pac-12 championship yet, because we haven't won that yet. We're still hungry to get to that goal. When we get there, we try to keep a standard of performance and a standard of passion, which if you ask any successful coach who's recruiting a college football player, what's the number one trait you look for in a football player who's talented, is what is his passion to play football. If you can find that player that is talented and has that internal passion, he's going to work his ass off in the weight room. He's going to work his ass off in the field. He's going to go to work every day and achieve his end state and hitting that high standard. Now, I don't want to speak for Coach Kelly because I work for him, but I help facilitate that vision. And no, I can't talk about how you can keep winning after a Rose Bowl, because we haven't done that yet, like Coach Vermeil has. Hopefully we'll be there pretty soon, but I'm going to close my mouth because I want to hear what Coach Vermeil has to say.
Well, I'm going to give you an opportunity, Bryce, and I love the way you put all that, right? It's about serving a mission that's not yours, right? You just kept saying, I work for the UCLA football team and Chip Kelly, and you can hear the alignment that you have in your pursuit of the Rose Bowl. And before if you could ask Coach Vermeil one question, what would it be? And I'll give you a second to think about that, because while you're thinking about that question, I'm getting a text here from my colleague, Will Huff, who has an exciting announcement. Will, you want to unmute yourself and just explain to the group what's going on?
Yeah, thanks, Harrison. I just want to share with the group, thanks to everyone joining us tonight. But we had a donor who wishes to remain anonymous, but he's pledging $1,500 matching gift in honor of Soldiers to Sidelines commitment to build legacy of our fallen heroes as we've opened up our services to Gold Star families. So I'm going to put the donate button in the chat for everyone, but very inspired by this individual who wanted to reach out and continue to make a difference. So thanks, Harrison.
Oh my gosh, Will, that's so awesome. Whoever just did that, just thank you so much. You're helping so many soldier coaches like Anthony Golliver, who has made it to UCLA to find a career in coaching. That's amazing. And, I also want to just let everyone know we have a really cool set of folks attending tonight. We have some special guests in the audience right now. We have Major General Brian Menace. We have one of the original soldier coaches, Coach Ben Kotwicka, who's coaching for the Minnesota Vikings right now. And we have Coach Albarisi's in the house, head lacrosse coach for Army West Point. And we have 1990 Army All-American Mike Mayweather. So thank you guys for attending tonight. So Bryce, if you have one question to ask Coach Vermeil, what would it be?
Coach, I mentioned before the call, I was in the locker room at Navy Marine Corps Stadium after we beat number 5 Houston, and Coach Niamatalolo called you in front of the team, and you spoke. And after you spoke, all the coaches pretty much looked around and kind of nodded and said, yes, that's why he's won so many games, Hall of Fame, et cetera, et cetera. When you talk to the team, you showed a vulnerability. You broke down, you cried, and I think several other men in that locker room cried. Can you expand upon the traits of compassion and love when it comes to caring for young men, coaching staffs, and winning teams?
I don't think I can explain it. I can feel it. I think I'm an emotional guy. I remember that, Frank Gans Sr. Had coached for me. He had been coaching at the University of Houston. They sort of made that a salute to him, if I remember right. And the kind of people you get, the kind of kids you get to coach, the kind of coaches they have at the Naval Academy, Westport, the West Point Air Force Academy, Coast Guard Academy. I've been in all those schools, and I see what they are, and they infect me. They make me feel better than I really am just by their presence. And when you look them in the eyes, you see a lot deeper. You see a lot deeper into those kids, and they touch me. And there are certain kids, a few years back before he passed away, General Schwarzkopf was being interviewed on 60 Minutes on Sunday night at 7 o'clock in Pennsylvania. And Barbara Walters asked him, I understand that you're an emotional guy and you can tear up and all that. He said, what about that? He says, Barbara, I never worried about those that teared or cried. He says, I worried about those that didn't, and that gave me a little reprieve because I always felt a little embarrassed when I get that way. And I still do it. I went over to see a kid that played for me in 1976, 77, say is seriously ill with cancer, and helped honor him at a banquet. And I get up to talk about him. I start getting teared up. It's just me. And it's hard to hide it. I've tried to hide it. And it just comes out of me. And I think it startles some people. I think initially when the team gets to know you, it doesn't happen that often, but when it does happen, they know there's some deep meaning in there somewhere. And there's somebody in there or some group of guys in there that really brought the passion out of you. And I don't know that I really don't know. I tell you, I used to have people, I walk in the stadium, people yell at me, hey, Vermeil, why don't you cry for me? And give me all kinds of crap. But, I learned to handle it because, like someone mentioned earlier, be authentic, be yourself. Don't hide who you are. And I've never been afraid to allow a person to get to know me, get to know me. Tonight I was on Total Access with Torrey Holt. Okay. I went to the airport to pick him up, 6th pick in the draft at 1999, wide receiver. And he was on the other side of the screen, of course, and the hostess asked him about what he remembered. And he said, Coach, I remember rookie night at his house during the season on a Thursday night. All the rookies came to Coach's house and Mrs. Vermeil cooked for us all. It's amazing. He didn't talk about catching 7 balls in the Super Bowl. He talked about having a meal in the head coach's home, cooked by his wife, listening to music, having a glass of wine, and that kind of experience. And I think all those things that you do because you believe in them authenticizes what you're all about. In that situation, I'm all about my rookies getting to know me off the field. Kids say something around a dinner table that they don't say in a meeting room. You never hear it in the practice field. In fact, you probably don't even hear it when they come in your office. But you sit them around in a front room in your own home and listen to them talk. I'll tell you, I've heard some unbelievable things from one kid talking to the other kid. I've heard kids say, I never had a Thanksgiving dinner. America, you've never had a Thanksgiving. I've never had a birthday cake. I've never had a birthday cake. It's sitting around a table in the NFL. So, the more I've always felt the more insight I have into the individual, the more I can help him help himself. Because I'm not going to cut the slack on him. I'm going to make him work harder than he's ever worked in his life. Okay. And I'm going to make him do it every day. You talked about my Rose Bowl team. If you look into the history of that Rose Bowl team, they went out on strike about 6 days into the 7 days into the preparation. They gave us 15 days to prepare for the game, but they didn't tell us we couldn't practice twice a day. See, and they had already beaten us, what, 41-23 in the regular season? So I went in double days. And I made a mistake as a leader after the USC game. I said, we're going to the Rose Bowl and we're going to have fun. Well, they thought that meant the Prime Rib Bowl and all the Disneyland, all that stuff. The only way to have fun is win. I never had any fun losing any ball game in my life. I've never gotten any satisfaction out of almost winning. Okay. And so I tell you, it was a real cliffhanger in that locker room. And an amazing thing, a couple of the ringleaders were not the real leaders. Were not the real. John Shire was the real leader. You know, these kind of guys were the real. Cliff Frazier. They weren't the guys. But you know, if you get at the bottom end of a roster, they're easier to influence. And all of a sudden, they're not going to practice. They're in their street clothes when they're supposed to be on the field, just ready to go on the field. Well, I wish I had taped that speech. But anyway, every time I'm with one of those kids from UCLA, they bring it up. They bring it up and they talk about it. And one by one, they showed up on the practice field, and all collectively, it was the upset of the history of the Rose Bowl. It's still considered the biggest upset in the history of the Rose Bowl. So, you know, it's those kind of things you never forget. And but when you can collectively put it into a one big man, one big football team, and that's just how they think. I heard Jimmy Johnson, or I read it. Jimmy Johnson said this not too long ago, a newspaper article read. They asked him about leadership. Did he ever worry about what's going on in the locker room? He said, no, if you're a good leader, you don't have to. They represent you. You know, pretty good comment. It takes a while to get to that point. You know that, right? Anyway, I probably talked too long. Go ahead.
No, it's impossible to talk too long. So we're just.
Hey, it didn't.
So, Bryce, how did that moment affect you? So you asked, you know, Coach about that speech in the locker room, and then when you heard that, and then now you hear his response. Now, how has that influenced you since in your coaching career?
Wisdom and the path of life are always in the forefront in the learning process, being a lifelong learner. I'm 42 years old and I still have a lot to learn.
I'm 85 and I'm still trying to learn, buddy. Don't ever stop.
So Coach Vermeil knows Coach Niumatalolo at Navy. And, you know, to this day, and reflect back to the Marine Corps days, to days as a player, et cetera, et cetera. You know, if your organization is not built on a foundation of love, and you're a father and a husband, and your home is not built on a foundation of love, and you can't show your authentic self, and then there's something wrong. You got a little more to learn, and learn by watching men of character, leaders. First was Coach Niumatalolo. He'd break down and cry all the time. We'd go around the room, talk about family, talk about experiences. Before every staffing, we called it the Kool-Aid. Everyone would have to share some defining poem, story, unique fact about their life, whether it's a video that impacted them. And we'd sit in there and break down and cry. And Coach Niumatalolo was the first one that did that and showed us what vulnerability was. And it, like Coach said, it galvanizes you. Did that with the team a lot. See Coach Vermeil, who everyone knows his background, does that in front of our team, which just proof in the fact that, you know, love reigns supreme, passion reigns supreme. Guess what? Get out to UCLA. The situation is a lot more dire than we think. Guess who I see break down and cry, show some vulnerability in front of the team? Coach Chip Kelly. I'm not saying that you need to go out and be a crybaby at all times, but there's some authenticity and moments to be shared whenever you can share the truth about yourself, what makes you tick, and also in those times of vulnerability or times of excitement. Anthony Golliver was probably weirded out when he got to UCLA because he sees this big guy hugging everybody. I'm a hugger. I make people uncomfortable sometimes because I'm a hugger. I've learned that, I'm just an exciting guy. That's the way I show compassion. But yeah, just you can see it, you can taste it whenever you're citing an organization. If these leaders know each other, if these players know those men that are serving them, it's palatable. And just, I wouldn't say I know it, just like Coach said, you can taste it. It's part of that, the lessons of wisdom.
Yeah, guys, I'm hearing this concept of knowing, this concept of wisdom as it's connected to feelings, right? And it's hard to describe, but we just know the feeling when we feel it. And one of my favorite aspects of football is it's such an emotional game. I mean, there's just so few opportunities to play it. If you're lucky in a football season, maybe now you get 11 or 12 games. And, if you play 4 years of college ball, I mean, that's 48 opportunities in your life that you have to do this. And there's a lot riding on it. And I think it's so cool to see two great leaders expressing true emotion, right? And I think that's what I also heard was the authenticity of the emotion just revealing itself because it needs to release. So, I believe that everyone on this call who has served in the military and who's gone through these trials and tribulations of just what military life is like is an asset to become a great coach, because sports is emotional and we are all humans and we feel these emotions, and our players do too. So when we can connect with the way that we feel and express that, is it allows us to connect with our players. So I want to ask Coach Vermeil, how do you believe that military service is an asset to become an impactful coach in the community?
Easy. First off, let me say, as a coach, I drafted players off the board when I had 100% control that were raised in a military family and lived in 15 different cities all over the world. And their father was still in the service. And when it was close, I would lean on that guy. In training camp, when I had a player that I knew had that kind of background, came out of that environment, there was always a higher degree of trust for where he is today. And because there's such a great foundation there. When you build on that great foundation, you get quality performance on a consistent basis every frickin' day, even if he's not good enough early enough. Football is a rep game. It's just like golf. If you're a lousy golfer with a 4-iron, if you practice with that 4-iron often enough, you're going to get a little better. You may not play in the Masters, but you will get better. But if you take every technique and give good coaches time to teach and time to coach and set tempo, they will get better. Maybe not the Pro Bowl, but when you start with a kid I always said, when you have the kids, and I can think who they are in my mind today, that were raised in military families, there's structure. They know how to hold themselves accountable. They know how they have responsibilities and they want to be held accountable. And you don't have to, that's almost a phase you can eliminate with these guys. You're working harder on these guys because these kids already know what it is, and to me, I just see some of the things that we do and the way we do them, leaving that deeper core that built our country to what it is today. I mean, built it from the ground up with these little common sense principles, and they decay. And boy, when you get a room of decay, it is tough to help them with. I'll tell you this. You talk about Los Angeles Rams, St. Louis Rams. We took that team over in 97. They were the losingest team in football by one game. They beat the Jets by one loss. Okay. Oh, in the 90s. The first OTAs, which are, voluntary workouts in sweats and all that kind of, there were times we didn't have enough to finish practice with 11 on 11 because Friday they'd be gone. Or there were times, which is amazing. But, only 9 guys off the original roster we took over wore Super Bowl ring. Nine guys. But I'll tell you, when those 9 guys get together, yeah, Bryce, you know what I'm talking about. They talk about what they went through to get there. You can't work like that anymore. The players union controls all that now. The double days, the contact, the hours on the practice field. All you guys know who Bud Carson was? Remember Bud Carson? One of the fine defensive coaches, defensive coordinator, Pittsburgh, Steelers, world championship teams. He's coaching for me my first year there, and he comes in. I'm thinking this is a great compliment. We only won 4 or 5 games. He says, Coach, I've never had so much fun coaching. I says, what do you mean we're getting beat? He says, yeah, but you're giving me time to coach. I get to work with these kids. I get to feel good about helping them get better, and he had passed away by the time we went to the Super Bowl, but great coach. Now, why not give him more time to coach? Now you have 22 guys on your staff and you can only work them. You can't work them as long as it just blows my mind. It would be like taking the Navy SEALs and said, let's loosen up all our tests. What you do in the future isn't too important. Drives me crazy.
Well, I hear fellowship, right? I hear, overcoming adversity, beating the odds, and then these 9 guys always getting together and reflecting on these moments. And that's another one of my favorite parts about sports. And actually on this call tonight is one of my college teammates who served in the Army for a while. We are actually having a discussion. He was just talking about the brotherhood and the sisterhood and the connections of the military. And I want to bring that back to Bryce now, and how the bonds that you created with the people you served with, how does that, I don't want to say compare, it's not even comparison, but like, how does that relate to like the bonds that are created on the coaching staff and on the football team, now that you've finished service in the Marine Corps and now are at UCLA?
It's a lot more similar than it is different. Going back to Coach Vermeil's, all working for a common vision. In the military, the outcome can be a lot more severe. Conditions can be a lot more severe. But in both arenas, you pretty much spend all day together. You have to have passion for your vocation, or you will burn out. And you've got to love one another. And I'm that guy that'll constantly beat on the table and talk about love. If you love what you're doing and you love those to the right and your left, it's not going to feel like work. And sports, we spend a lot of time in this building. You come in at 06, just in the off season, you leave 1800. During the season, you're leaving God knows when. But it's all day towards a common mission. And you do build those bonds. The military ones are a little more unique. I get the call on certain dates. It's either, hey, sir, you remember when I pulled your ass out of a Humvee and you're bleeding out, et cetera, or remember when we did this and that and the other. But let me pivot off that point right now, because this is a good crowd to talk about. 2 things. It's going to correlate with football and the military that I'm concerned with right now, that one thing I'm concerned with, one thing that we're responsible for. What I'm concerned with right now is military and transition. We just finished a 15+ year engagement where you all were involved. We're having issues transitioning across the entire military. Some of you may have zero issues, but all of you will know people who have issues. Going back to Harrison's question, how are they similar? That don't leave the community. Make sure you stay in touch with your micro communities, because you have no idea what your words will mean to some of your shipmates, fellow soldiers, airmen, seamen. We all need it. When I say transition, I work with a PTSD TBI clinic here at UCLA. That transition window, we're talking 5 to 15 years out. I now have 3 little community daily, or not daily, every Wednesday we check in separate, I guess, pods, I'd call them, from the military. So as we all transition, especially, it could happen sooner than 5 to 15 years, but be cognizant, continue to share the love, the inspiration, the check-ins with all of your mates from the military. Very important thing. Community, keep that community together. Number 2, as a representative of your fellow branch of service, bottom line, how can they be similar, Harrison? We all serve the athlete. We serve one another. Very simple. Go forth into this world and be a shining light. Be an inspiration. Have great energy. If you're not a hugger, be the best damn high fiver ever, and keep a high damn standard, because you owe it to them. So sorry to talk about the community. That's a little asterisk in the back of my mind. I knew I wanted to talk about tonight, just because we don't deal with it. We live with it often. And if you do need help, make sure you reach out.
Right.
But Harrison, yes, there's a very high correlation to loving one another, being passionate, because you are spending a lot of time serving these young men, and having a very, very focused vision. And when you find those turds that are thinking outside the organization's vision, make sure you get rid of them. That is all.
Awesome, Bryce. And it just, that makes me emotional, because we are the Soldiers to Sidelines tribe, and this is the community, and this is what we're doing. And the proof is in the pudding that we have 65 people on this call tonight. Like, we're all here together to share in the fellowship and the stories and the experiences that we've all had, and we're going to continue to move forward. And we are here to help each other. And hopefully we take Coach McDonald's advice, and we do ask for help, because we can't do it alone. Right? We have all these individual achievements and things that we've done, but like the military and football has shown us, we rely on the people to our left and to our right to get it done. So let's continue to do that and have fun with it, right? The fellowship that is happening tonight is so amazing, and we can talk about the stories of the past and laugh, and cry and share a glass of wine to it, and that brings me up. Like, I want to share another story. 2 years ago, we had another guest on this show, Coaching Legends and American Heroes, who was a player for Coach Vermeil, and that is Coach Herm Edwards. And so Coach was on, and he was talking about the miracle in the Meadowlands. And we loved hearing his perspective of that moment and being on the field, and how that changed everything for the Philadelphia Eagles, and Coach Vermeil is the head coach. And I want to just take this opportunity to ask you, Coach, like, what were you thinking in this moment when you're watching now former player Edwards, now Coach Edwards, what were you thinking watching this whole thing evolve on the field?
Well, when it happened, I was taking off my headset. I was taking my headset off. I called my own offense, and obviously we're on defense now. We failed to get the score to put us ahead, that kind of something. All of a sudden, they have the ball, and the defense is on the field. And Chuck Bednarik was standing next to me, one of the greatest football players of all times. 29 missions as a tail gunner and a B-29 was, there was real depth to this guy. Okay, real depth. And he's standing to me, and I said, well, it's over. God darn it, we got beat. We needed this one. Our owner of the team was in Houston having a valve put in his heart, which was experimental at that time. He wasn't even at the game, probably a good thing. But anyway, when I saw it materialize, it stuns you. So, but believe this or not, when I realized what happened, there was a little empathy for the opposing coaches. I couldn't imagine the feeling of losing a game like that. Now they lost their jobs the next day. The head coaches got fired, and the staff got fired. But it's hard to explain. It allowed us to be a 9 and let's see, at that time we're still playing 14 games, so it gave us the one win to put us positive. Or was 78 the first season with 16 games? I don't remember, but anyway, it propelled us on into the playoffs for the first time, like you said, since 1960. Okay, that's 1978. That's a long time. Okay, and the other thing was great feeling for me is Herman was very special. Now you're talking about a guy that was raised in the military. Okay, you talk about Herman, that's the first thing he reflects is the great relationship and love and respect he had for his own father. Okay, and I saw that in him when we signed him, and he made our football team as an undrafted free agent. Okay, and he wasn't very fast, but he was very structured, very disciplined, and unbelievable work ethic to improve every little technique he could improve to be better. He took, like I said, took the forearm, all of a sudden was, hitting it 200 yards with a forearm when he didn't have the ability to do it. He was a gifted athlete, though. Didn't have the top speed, but he was a gifted athlete. But it was great that a player of his structure got to do it. He could have easily been standing on the sideline on the edge, just watching the last play to go down. But God loved Marion Campbell. He had them all coming off the corner. He's the right corner, intercepting a ball, fumble to the end zone. So he wasn't standing on the other side of the line. Takes it in to score. Then I saw the big pile up, and great elation. But yet, as a coach and a leader, I couldn't help thinking how I would feel if I were on the other side of that field. Really, that entered my mind, and I tell people that. They say, "Oh, you're kidding me." I said, "No, I'm not. I'm telling you the truth." Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it makes a lot of sense, in the NFL. I mean, it's cutthroat. Like you can't help not to recognize how short the career can be in the NFL because it's such a production business. I mean,
let me tell you something. Most people don't know this. Going into the last season, there were 511 people carried the title of head coach in the history of the National Football League, including interim coaches. 29.8% of them were fired after the first year.
Wow.
29.8% of them. So there's you create your own security. And the problem is today that people above that hire and put people in a position, too many of them don't give the guy a real good chance because there's so much money and they listen to so many other people and the media gets all over them. And so many guys get fired the second year if they'd just let him finish. I would have never been able to coach my third year if I got fired on my second year. We only won 4 games when we won the world championship the next year. Okay, I would have never gotten there. You're just getting established. You're just really ingraining the entire building. Some of my best friends I have today are people that didn't coach. They were in the building with us. that felt that their job was contributing to helping us be a good football player. And they loved the feeling. They loved feeling important and being involved in the overall process. Mike Doherty, our video guy, oh my gosh, Joyce Iman, who married Ken Iman, who I brought here as an assistant coach, who was a player for 16 years in the league. And I was coaching him. I said, someday if I'm a head coach of the league, I'm going to hire you. You know, and he was playing at that time. But coaches, and the trouble today is everything's based on the win-loss record. Another thing John Wooden told me, he says, best coaches aren't always the guys that win the most games. Usually first it's the environment. Who is in a position to get the best players. And then you don't screw up, you go ahead and win. But there's a lot of finest football coach I think I've ever watched coach football, period, Phil Snyder, Kansas State. You want to watch someone coach football. By far the best football coach I ever seen coach a football team. Okay. Tom Coughlin at Boston College. My God, you talk about coach. I saw him take on Notre Dame, Michigan, Penn State. Amazing. Yeah, nowhere close. But they were all extremely well coached and just close enough to be good players. And so that's a whole process. It's a whole process that it all starts with that structure and discipline and foundation, and everybody, like Chuck Knox used to say, on the same page. Everybody on the same page. One time, Chuck Knox said to me, one year I worked for him at 70, I guess it was 73, the Rams. They fired the staff and kept me on the staff. And I'm sitting there at lunchtime, double days, and I'm bitching about my running backs. Oh, these guys can't buy these. Chuck Knox puts both hands on the table, loud. Everyone, all the coaches together at lunch. At those days, 8 or 9 coaches were large staff. He says, Vermeil, if they could already do the things you're bitching about that they can, I wouldn't need you. Never forgot it. I never, ever forgot that. And I used it a few times as a head coach, believe me. And it's true. That's what your job is, to make them better. Make them better.
And, I think that's such a great statement to end on, right? Make them better. Yeah. That's what we're all doing on this call, right? I think that's our task. Once we leave this Zoom tonight, is we should all be thinking, make them better. Whoever it is, if it's the person in the living room next to us tonight or in the kitchen, whoever, can we make them better? And can we do it?
Can make them better. Chip Kelly can make them better. I've watched him practice a number of times here. I have never been on a football field with better practices. I have never seen better practice organization and tempo and things getting done at it. It startled me. I just never seen it the way that touched. Everybody copies him now in a lot of it, but he's the innovator of it. And I believe in him. Last year I was in there the night before they opened the season. I was at Terry Donahue's Celebration of Life, and he and I sat together in the evening. His football team was in the hotel. His coaches were at the hotel, and he thought enough. Touches me. He thought enough of Terry Donahue and what he did at UCLA to leave his own team for a little while to come over and show his respect to the Donahue family at the Celebration of Life. He won me. I don't care if he wins a game. I believe in him. I believe in him.
What a great message to send to Coach Kelly. And I have to make this announcement too. Coach Kelly also is a Blue Jay. So he was a defensive coordinator for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays, Pride and Poise. And I want to turn that back over to you, Bryce, for final remarks. Like as we leave tonight, thinking about making everyone better through love and authenticity, what would you like to send us off on, Coach McDonald?
Harrison, thank you for the opportunity to fellowship. Coach Vermeil, thank you for the wisdom, sir. Amazing, amazing. And the men and women on here, just getting to spend some time with some fellow veterans and active duty members. It means a lot. You don't get a lot in LA. I do work with amazing men and women that sharpen me every day. but it's good to get a little taste. And this means a lot to me. Appreciate you making it happen, Harrison.
Thanks, Bryce. And thank you, Coach Vermeil, for
you.
taking the time and sharing your wisdom. And thank you to our anonymous donor and everyone else who contributed to make that matching gift. And also thank you to Berkshire Hathaway Energy who powered this event tonight. They're big supporters of Soldiers to Sidelines, and we are grateful for everybody who is joining the mission to help our communities be better through the values of integrity, discipline, teamwork, and fellowship that the military has to offer. Thank you, everyone. I hope everyone has a wonderful night.
Take care. Thank you for the opportunity.
Bye, Coach.
Bye-bye. Take care. I'll say hello to Al for you.
Please do.
I will.